So now we're joined by Jules from Under the Abbey Stand Pod. Jules, how are we doing, buddy?
I'm really good, thanks, mate. End of a bank holiday weekend, but 3 points in the bag, so it could be worse.
Yeah, let's quickly talk about your summer window then. Obviously, Cambridge have had quite a few ins and outs. Iredale's quite a big out that you've had, but you managed to keep Smith, Ironside, etc. Out of the 6 games that we've played, 5-6 games that we've played so far, out of all the summer signings that you've made, who do you think's made the biggest impact on your first team?
Well, do you know what? First of all, let's just say that we're recording this on the 29th of August, so let's not speak too soon about people leaving, because there's been a lot of interest in, your likes of Smith, Charlotte Tracy, Harvey Nibbs. They've had interest from rumours from MK, Cardiff, Portsmouth. Doesn't seem to be any truth in them yet, and Bonner keeps saying that the squad as it is will stay together. It's been a good summer. Honestly, do you know what? For me, the transfer window feels like so long ago, because we got our business done early. We replaced Ida was the biggest loss for us. Amazing season last season, absolutely. I mean, for anyone watching here probably doesn't know his career as well as we do. But he, we signed him from Carlisle. He'd had like 2 ACL injuries. He wasn't highly rated at all. We played a massive part in our promotion season. Then came up last year and we had no centre backs, and he played centre back for almost the majority of the season as a born and raised left back, and he was brilliant. So he was a big miss. We replaced him, but what's sort of funny about it is what we've done in the window is, rather than players that have slotted straight into our starting 11, is we've just improved our depth massively. Whereas last season, if you looked at, so obviously our big result last season, we beat Newcastle in the Cup. If you looked at the bench that day, we had 3 players that had never made an appearance for us, 17-year-old lads. We were just filling benches with 17-year-olds. Also, the same happened when we came up to Sincil Bank, which was the week after that. And what we've got now is we signed, the likes of Psycho Jana, who's got good experience at this level, Fajiri Okanabire, who's also got a good goal-scoring record at Doncaster and Shrewsbury at this level. Brandon Hounstrup is at the moment still a backup left back. Harrison Dunk's been at the club for 10 years, and he's still fighting for his place. He's not fighting for his place. He's one of the first names on the team sheet, if anything. So, long answer to your question, but in reality, our biggest strength is our stability. More of the same. We had a good year last year, and yeah, long may it continue.
Anything else that you feel Cambridge might need to add to the squad before the deadline? I think this should go out just after, but anything you feel like you might need in the last couple of days?
I don't think so, honestly. I think we're well set. This is why the transfer window to me feels like a thing of the past now. It sort of feels like it's something that was done before the first game of the season, because it was such a, we got our business done nice and early, and it was all done. And unless we do lose one of those big names, I would be surprised though to see them make a sort of rash signing. We've got a really stable, smart recruitment system at the club at the moment, with Ben Strang heading that up, obviously with Mark Bonner very involved as well. So I don't think we're going to be an active club in the ingoing way over the next couple of days. But yeah, it's just hoping basically that we don't lose one of our forward assets over the next 48 hours or whatever it is.
Let's talk Mark Bonner then. A manager I was really impressed with last year. Obviously, had a good debut season, getting you guys promoted and into League One, and then just smashed it out of the park last year. Obviously, one of your own, come from being a Cambridge United fan on the terraces. That must be pretty cool, having a supporter as a manager. You must have such a connection with him.
It's honestly, it's one of those things that it's like a fairy tale almost. You just can't. You can't. I mean, you'll know as well as me that if there was a Lincoln City born and raised, season ticket holder as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, the sort of guy who I think he shared when it's like something like National Book Day, and he shared, they had to do like a thing at school when they were 11, and they all shared their dreams. They had to like write down what their dream job was, and his was being the Cambridge United manager at 11 years old, and he had like the photo of him holding it up as a kid and stuff. So it's like there is that connection, which is just so hard to it's so rare and so hard to sort of to describe. And it's not just that, he's not just someone who knows the history of the club, knows what it means to play for the club, sorry, not to play for the club, to manage the club. Knows what it means to supporters. Is always has a word for supporters if we've travelled a long distance or if we've taken a big defeat or anything like that. It's always the first thing on his mind. It's also the fact that he's a really, really good football manager. I mean, a lot of your listeners might not know that he left school when he was 16 and he volunteered at Cambridge United as a volunteer coach. He's filled every single position between there and the first team head coach, with a short spell in Southend in the middle in their academy. His bread and butter is bringing youth players and developing them as footballers into first team players. That's where he's spent the majority of his coaching career, in the academy and as head of the academy. But in the first team, what he's done is just got an ability to take a group of players that on paper weren't good enough to get promoted from League One, were nowhere near good enough to stay up in get promoted from League Two, and we're nowhere near good enough to stay in League One, let alone finish mid-table, let alone get to the fourth round of the cup, beating Premier League opposition away. He just sort of, anything you expect from this side is just. It's just nothing to them. They're a really resilient, really tight-knit squad, and that's all because of Bonner. And now what we've started to do is add a little bit of actual genuine quality into that as well, which is what might make us a little bit of a hard team to face this season.
And with everything going well in football, it ultimately means that someday he might have to move on. Now, I've not seen him linked with the likes of obviously over the summer the job at QPR was available. Liam Manning was one that was for it. Michael Duff, Mark Bonner's name wasn't on there, and I thought that was pretty unjust. Are you starting to get worried that if he keeps performing the way he does, the Championship will come calling for him sooner rather than later?
It's inevitable at some stage, right? The guy can't keep doing this with the budgets and the resources that he's got and not have a bit of interest from somewhere. I do think, and I also think something that he always speaks about, which is a really important thing to mention, is that he mentions how, yes, he's a fan, but he separates the fan, the fan in him to the professional in him, because you can't be a fan and take all the emotions of supporting a football team into being the manager of a football team, because you've got to be level-headed, you've got to be, you've got to be assured of your decisions, you've got to be confident of the point you're making, be cool and calm under pressure. Whereas fans are very emotional and very, they ride the roller coaster, is what he always says. Whereas they need to, not get too high when it's good, not get too low when it's bad. So I think in the same way that when the right job comes along, they might want a bit of Ben Strang and him as well, because they've been a partnership that have been inseparable and really, really important together. So I'm not going to pretend that it's not going to happen, and it surprised me that a few of these jobs haven't had a bit of interest with Bonner. It'd be interesting to see if Liam Manning went to see what happened with the MK Dons odds, because I guarantee Bonner would be right up there. I would be really shocked to see him go before the end of this season, just because he's the sort of guy that I don't think would leave us in any sort of situation. I think would really, really think about a project before going. But yeah, look, in the future, I mean, the guy's 36, 37. He's got a promotion, a mid-table finish with one of the lowest budgets in the league. To his record, it's not bad. So at some point, it's going to have to happen, unless we are the Championship club that he manages in the Championship with. But I think that's quite unlikely at this stage, even, to be honest.
And Saturday just gone. You played a really entertaining game against Burton Albion.
Entertaining one way to put it.
4-3. I mean, it looked from the highlights. It looked fascinating and tactically as well. Obviously, you were there. Talk us through it and how you guys played, and ultimately you got on the right side of the result.
Yeah, that's the important thing to say, right? Because it's such a. Do you know how the football, and especially lower league football, just throws up some games sometimes that are just mental for the sake of being mental? Like, it was a really weird game. They scored after 14 seconds. So the one thing we were saying before the game was like, okay, we're clearly a better side than Burton. They've not started the season well. They're spiralling. Their form is horrendous. They've got 1 point. Right, we're at home. We've won both our games at home so far this season. You're thinking, okay, right, what you want to do is you want to score nice and early, first 10 minutes, settle the nerves, and then that's going to put them on the back foot. They'll lose it. They've got no confidence anyway. And then you go score another, probably one more, 3-0 win. That's what we were expecting. I barely even walked in the ground by the time the ball dropped into the net. And they were 1-0 up. So it's like, okay, right, brilliant. then we get ourselves level sort of towards the end of the first half, and you think, okay, that's a little bit of like a deadlock broken. Let's switch momentum. And then we had a spell of 10 minutes where I think I'd be quite surprised if the people previewing the game behind the scenes at Lincoln ahead of our game on Saturday won't be looking at that 10 minutes going, God, they can be put under some real pressure, because this is 10-man Burton. It was corner after corner, free kick. Like they managed to put us under some heavy pressure, and then they topped it off by scoring with a free header from a corner. That was a really deflating goal, that one, because it was all of our own doing. We weren't clearing our lines well enough. We weren't organised well enough. So that was pretty poor there. And then obviously, we've got, you'd expect 11 against 10 to come out anyway, but it did show a lot of resilience. We kept coming back into the game. Smith was clinical on the day, which was one of the biggest differences. He scored his hat-trick, first professional hat-trick. And Liam O'Neill off the bench tapped the winner, scored the winner, another Cambridge boy, just that link continuing. And he changed the game really in the last 20 minutes. He gave us a bit of impetus, which shows that sort of depth that I mentioned earlier that we've got this season. We've got options on the bench now that can really change games. So yeah, it was a bit of a mad game, to be honest. I'd say on the balance of things, we probably deserved it. I mean, their third goal was a complete howler by our keeper, who's been so solid. So it's just one of those things that happens. But I think in general, I think we deserved it. But I'd want this Saturday to be a lot more comfortable if we're going to take anything from it, to be honest.
Yeah, we like to take a look at the last meeting between the two clubs on the preview. Yeah. As much as I would love to be talking about the 5-1 last year,
5-1, yeah.
We have got to talk about the 1-0. I think it was Joe Ironside that scored the goal. Yeah. What were your memories of that day? Obviously, it felt a bit like a smash and grab win.
It did.
You might not have another view of that.
This is a fair while ago now, and as I said, I think it was the Saturday straight after we'd been up in Newcastle celebrating another 1-0 win with a Joe Ironside goal. So we were on a bit of a mad couple of weeks, to be honest. That was a great day, Lincoln. I mean, it's I think what I remember from that game is I think just after the Lincoln game, we had Crewe and Doncaster at home, who you remember were both fairly shambolic, and we still had some points we needed to get to stay up, which was all we were bothered about. And I know Lincoln weren't doing particularly well, but I think we were more focused. So if you're going to win any of these games, let's win the next two, because they're both at home. They seemed like the ones to go for. So I think there was a little bit of, I'm not saying there was, maybe the pressure was off a little bit, but I think we were sort of riding that wave of momentum that a cup win gives you. I think we did have quite a few injuries at the time. My memory of the game is that you were a lot better for the majority of it, for large spells of it. You were playing the ball around much nicer than us. We were probably playing a little more of a brutish style, let's say. I remember our keeper making an absolute worldie save in the first half, like a save that's worth a goal sort of thing. Like you've got no right to save that. That's what's sticking in my head. I do remember the last 15 minutes though, we were it felt like that's where the sort of confidence and the difference maybe. I mean, stop me if I'm wrong, because I can't remember where you're at with your season, but like it felt like you were a team a bit more lacking in confidence as the game wore on. We grew into it a lot. I think we introduced Wes Houlihan at some point in that second half, and he swung the free kick in that got nodded back for Ironside's winner. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't a smash and grab, but you take them sometimes, don't you? Like it's so weird. Like 2 weeks ago we were at Oxford and they did the exact same thing to us, and we walked out the ground going, "Well, do you remember Lincoln last year?" It's one of those things that happens. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes the other. So yeah, I remember it not being a game like full of quality, but sometimes one team gets over the line and another doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on Lincoln so far this year. Obviously, we've had a bit of a bad year last time around. What are your thoughts on sort of Mike Kennedy from what we've already discussed that over on your pod, and also the recruitment that you've seen Lincoln make over the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's Lincoln are an interesting club, because obviously there's that playoff season where you're 1-0 up in the playoff final, was it?
Yeah.
2 summers ago?
Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago in a way, because I listened to a couple of Football League podcasts and stuff, and the sort of general feeling around predicting Lincoln's finishes is would I say that we're expected to finish higher than that Cambridge United is expected to finish higher than Lincoln? Maybe not categorically, but I think we're much closer in the league than if you'd said 2 years ago we would be. especially last season, it seemed like, from the outside looking in, it seemed like a real disappointment. I know you had a load of injuries, didn't you? It was really what marred your season. I suppose the main thing that I'm interested in, and I haven't kept up to, I see you're like 18th or something, 18th, 19th. Yeah, it's August. That's sort of irrelevant. But you got a new manager as well, which is always going to take a little bit of time to bed in. But I suppose what I am interested in is, like, Appleton had a whole season with last year with, I suppose, this squad or nearly this squad. And he managed to finish about that, right? 19th? 18th?
Yeah, 16th, I think we came.
Oh, sorry, I've done you a disservice. Anyway, bottom half is what I mean. And it's like it's suddenly trusting a rookie manager to improve on that by quite a distance in what is such a competitive league. I think Lincoln will be fine. They've got too much quality in terms of relegation. And I think we'll end up very near each other again, about a place or two away. In terms of signings, we were talking earlier about that Jack Diamond, who I've heard a lot spoken about. So I feel like that will really add to your ranks. But how do you go about replacing someone like Anthony Scully? I mean, as I mentioned earlier, that performance at the Abbey in that 5-1 was one of the best opposition performances I've ever seen. He was absolutely unreal. So I know he probably doesn't play like that every single week, but he must be a tough player to replace. So yeah, I don't know. I hope I haven't pulled any cold water over your sort of your enthusiasm.
No, not at all, mate. Not at all. And if I have to push you for a score prediction for Saturday afternoon, are we thinking more in the 5-1 mould? I'm hoping you're going to say.
I'll go in. Maybe I'll go. Nah, do you know what? I said it on our pod just before we recorded our little. When you kindly joined our pod too, I said 1-1, and it feels like I feel like both teams might take a point here, and I feel like it's going to be a really tough game. I don't really know what to make of Lincoln. So yeah, just sort of anything that isn't a 5-1 shellacking, I'll be pretty happy with, to be honest.
Plug your pod, mate. Whilst we've got you, make sure you tell the people where to go and check you out.
Yeah, I mean, if any faithful imps fancy some Cambridge United Office and The Office references, then they want to follow at Abbey Stan Pod on Twitter and same on Instagram as well. Yeah, and we've got pods come out every week, but fair play to you if you're a Lincoln fan, you fancy listening to a Cambridge pod every week. But that's what you can find it everywhere if you like, every Monday.
But top man, George, thanks for coming on, mate.
Nice one, Jake. Appreciate it.